Thought you were sick. He medicated, all right. Good evening. Hope everyone's keeping up with their daily study, their devotional for our Sunday morning series. I'm excited about that series. If you haven't been doing so, I pray that you'll get busy right away and do your daily Bible reading and devotional. One of the things that excites me most, I think, about this Sunday morning series is the opportunity it affords us to recruit new adult Bible class teachers. And over the course of the next few months and the year, we hope to be able to interview some that are willing to do that. And if they're obviously qualified and wanting to, we're going to put you to work. And so we're excited about that and excited to see some new blood coming our way. Appreciate Chris kicking us off, and he'll be teaching again this coming Sunday. And then the first Sunday in February, we're going to have a special treat. Brother Pettigill will be teaching his first class here with us that morning. And so we're excited that he'll be involved. And so anyone that hasn't signed the list yet, you might want to see Chris, and we'll see what we can do about working with you and interviewing you, making sure that you're ready to do this great work. We've been studying, of course, Genesis, and we're in chapter 3. We were last week. We read chapter 3. And so we're not going to take the occasion tonight to read through chapter 3. I want to kind of summarize what we were looking at as we saw the origin of the wicked one, Satan, as we discover him coming on the scene there in chapter 3. And of course, the point we were making, and I want to just reiterate it tonight, is that Satan is in the business of destroying relationships. That's what he does. And it's kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about that until I was preparing my class actually today. And I thought about what the Hebrew writer said about Jesus coming in the flesh to destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil. And so when you think of the Prince of Life, and you think about the one who has the power of death, you think about polar opposites, do you not? And so when God says to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, Satan is going to say what? He's going to say, well, the opposite. And so anything he can do to disrupt the peace and tranquility between man and his creator, and between man and man, that's what he's in the business of doing. And it's kind of like, if you look at it in that negative light, it's kind of like the summary of the law. The law summarized, or at least it hangs or hinges on two basic commandments. Love God first and foremost, and love your neighbor as yourself. All the other things you read about in the law, if you look at them in their proper light, are connected to those two commandments. When you think about the schemes, the devices of Satan, you realize if you look back in that other direction, what he's attempting to do is destroy relationships. It may be nothing more than destroying your relationship with yourself. And he certainly is adept at doing that, and we'll see perhaps some more of that tonight. So I just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on that and kind of introduce you to this evil individual who is seeking, of course, our destruction. We kind of ended last week in a hurried note, and so I want to pick up where we were. We were looking at his methods, his devices, to use the words of Paul to the Corinthian church. We're not ignorant, he said, of his devices. I believe that's 2 Corinthians 2, is it not? Where Paul was there urging the church at Corinth to restore the individual that had been punished by the majority. He's repented now, and they are to restore him back to full fellowship, lest Satan get an advantage of them. So their high horse behavior, if you will, their self-righteous behavior, their unforgiving spirit would certainly play right into one of the devices of Satan. And so Paul is urging them to forgive this man and to restore him to his rightful place. So he has certain methods, and that's noted even by the Holy Spirit in Paul's letter to the church at Corinth. Now, we ended last week with this very thought. Satan uses others quite often to do what he would have done. And so in the case of Adam and Eve, he was there somehow speaking through or urging this serpent creature, whatever he was like originally, we don't know, but he was speaking through the serpent creature and giving the message to Mother Eve. And of course, we noted that the same is still true today. For example, again, 2 Corinthians 11, where Paul spoke of those who were opposed to him and to his ministry, seeking to undermine him and his work. He said, such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness. And we noted last week how that in that business meeting in 2 Kings that's recorded, where there was a business meeting in heaven about how God was going to persuade Ahab to go to his death, this lying spirit came forth and said, I've got the answer. I'll go and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all of his prophets. And the Lord said, go and prosper. And he did. And so he caused those men once again to lie to the king and to encourage him to go into battle. And of course, it cost him his life. And so it fulfilled God's purpose. But isn't that fascinating? How even God is aware of what's going on. He sees it. And there are times when, of course, he's obviously sanctioning what's happening because it fulfills a greater goal. But again, Satan uses people. Remember when Peter was speaking to Jesus, urging him not to go to Jerusalem because Jesus said there he would be betrayed and crucified, and Peter urged him not to go. And you remember what Jesus said to Peter? Get behind me, Satan. He knew that Satan was speaking through Peter, using Peter to fulfill his purpose and to discourage Jesus from his mission. This is fascinating. And so you understand that today, as Paul is here reminding us, demons preach their message through agents. And those agents are often preachers. And they present themselves as preachers of righteousness. And so we have to be discerning, do we not? In fact, that's what Paul, or rather John, said in 1 John when he said, we're to try the spirits, whether they be of God. Because many, what? False prophets have gone out into the world. And so we have to be able to put them to the test and be sure that what we're hearing is true. Now, something else about Satan that I believe is worth noting. I'm sure we're all no doubt aware of this. But he knows our weaknesses. He knows where we are vulnerable. It could be in your marriage. It could be with a child of yours. It could be with a parent. It can be emotional damage that's afflicted upon children even when they're growing up. Satan's aware of this. He's aware of your psychological, emotional tendencies. And so he will use those as an advantage or to take advantage of you. And so he's using that against you. You may be the kind of individual that doesn't have any of those issues. Maybe you have other issues. Maybe you've been spoiled all your life. You had an easy life. And so you know he knows basically that that's where you're coming from and that you don't have a lot of strength to resist any kind of opposition to your chosen lifestyle. And so he will use others to oppose you or whatever method. Again, I think it's important to realize the enemy we face is extremely intelligent. He's not just an angry being who's out of control. He is angry, that's for sure, but he certainly knows what he's doing. He is a formidable foe. In fact, so formidable that Paul would write to the Ephesian church in chapter 6 and urge them as they were wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against these very powers that we're here discussing. He said, take the whole armor of God, and so stand in the strength of the Lord. That was his point, because you're not going to be able to resist on your own. And so again, there's something, I guess, worth noting here. He knows what your weakness is. Are you prone to be an alcoholic or to abuse drugs, or you sexual impurity of some kind, or gambling, or you have anger issues, You could be any number of things. You may be a politician. He knows what your weakness is, and he will use it, of course, to, you didn't get that, did you? But he'll use these against us. I'm just making sure Smiley was awake. So here's another scheme or device. And I think this is one, I know I've mentioned this many times, but this is probably the most often used. It certainly was used in the Garden of Eden. He wants you to doubt, first of all, that there is a God. Secondly, he wants you to doubt that God has communicated with you. And if he has, that he has not communicated effectively. That you're not capable of hearing or understanding the word of the Lord. You hear people say all the time, preachers will say, well, everybody's got their own interpretation. We can't all read and understand the Bible alike. That is a lie. That is a simple, straight out lie. You can't what kind of God would it be that would say, well, I'm going to give them my word and I'm going to tell them I'm going to judge you by that word, but hey, it's so mysterious and so dark, you can't possibly understand it, so just do the best you can. Why give us the word at all? We're just going to feel our way through anyway. It's absurd. When you think about it, it's just a silly and absurd argument. God did speak to us, and he intends for us to understand his message. And so we are to understand the will of the Lord, to quote Paul in Ephesians 5. But he uses doubt. And if he gets you to doubt one portion of Scripture, he gets you to doubt the whole Bible. And if he gets you to doubt whether the God of the Bible is the true God, or whether there are many gods, or just obscure your concept of God. Again, he wants to assault, attack your understanding, and therefore your relationship with God. That's his business. He lies. You remember when Mother Eve answered him, as he's planting that seed of doubt, did God really say you should not eat of every tree of the garden? Is that what God said? And so he's trying to get her to doubt whether she could understand what God said clearly. And so she said, well, no, we can eat freely of the trees of the garden, but the one in the midst of the garden, we can't eat of it. We can't even touch it. She added that. I'm not sure. I didn't read that in chapter 2, but maybe God did say that. I don't know. But she was aware, at least, that it was forbidden and was not to be consumed. And so she said, no, that one tree we can't eat. And so, because in the day we do thereof, we'll surely die. And what did Satan say to that? You will not. You won't surely die. He just lies. God states something affirmatively, he denies it. He denies what God affirms. He affirmed what God denies. He's taking the opposite of whatever the truth is, and so he lies. He lies all the time. Baptism ain't got nothing to do with salvation, but what does the Bible say? He that believes and is baptized shall be. Sounds like it's got something to do with salvation to me, if you just take it at face value, but he has a lot of preachers in this town, sadly, that are preaching this very night, perhaps. Baptism ain't got nothing to do with salvation. That is a lie. If you are denying what Christ affirms, you're a liar. And that's what Satan is. And of course, Jesus said that about him in the very earliest of his ministry. So, if you remember in chapter 3, after Eve had eaten and given to her husband, and he ate also, God's voice was heard. They knew he was coming. They heard him coming, and so what did they do? They hid. What a futile effort that it would be. You remember when Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh and cry against that great city? So he got on a ship going in the opposite direction. And I'm going to flee from the presence of the Lord. David had it right in the psalm. Where can I go from your presence? If I ascend into the heaven, you're there. If I go to hell, you're there. I can't get away from your presence. No matter where I go, you're there. And so Jonah was mistaken to think he could flee from the presence of the Lord. That's absurd. And so Adam and Eve were just panicking, no doubt, because they're ashamed. Shame is now part of the human condition. It was not before. It was absolute, total innocence. When you think about frolicking about naked, we hear that and we're thinking, ooh, that's kind of, naughty. We shouldn't talk that way. But if you go back to the very beginning of time, and we still see that today, do we not, with babies, newborns. I mean, a newborn, okay, naked, but they're innocent. And they don't care, do they? You ever change a diaper? They don't care. Whatever, you know. But, and Adam and Eve were like that, you know, just totally innocent. Until they realized they did the very thing God told them not to do. And now, shame is part of their psychological, emotional, and spiritual makeup. And it's not healthy. But unfortunately, it's part of what we have accomplished by defying God. So when God comes in the cool of the day, he asked the question, Adam, where are you? I remember many years ago, one of the first sermon outline books I remember reading. It was an old book. I forgot who wrote it or whose sermons they were. I mean, the binding was literally crumbling and falling apart. Really good sermons in it. This is not to be confused with, what is his name, wrote all those powerful sermons in the sermon. Leroy Brownlow, he did a lot of good sermon outlines too. But this was predating his time. But he was talking about Bible questions. And of course, he began here. The first question that was asked of Adam and Eve, where are you? And I thought that's an interesting way because there are a lot of questions in the Bible. If a man, you know, gains the whole world and loses his, what is he profited? And that's a powerful question. How shall we escape if we neglect so great? That's a powerful question. Where are you? I'm revisiting this question, and I want you to see if I can make sense of what I'm trying to say. When I mentioned last week, Satan is in the business of destroying relationships. God loves us. He really loves us. In fact, the only way he can help us understand love for us is best found in Ephesians 5, as Paul discusses husbands and wives. And yet Paul said, I'm speaking concerning Christ and the church. Great mystery, but that's what I'm really talking about. I'm paraphrasing him, but that's what he's saying. That this is the gist of what I'm getting at. And so when you think about Christ being the groom, we're the bride, this is an intimate relationship that he desires. This is how he sees us as his bride. Imagine a man discovers that his wife is cheating on him. How would he hear that news? How would he receive that news? How would it strike him? He would probably, if he can't find her at home, what's the first thing you do? Pick up the phone and dial her number. And when she answered, what's the first thing you think he's going to say? Where are you? When you think about it like that, and you think about this question, I think that's probably more likely the gist of this question, the nature of this question. God knew exactly where Adam and Eve were. He knows everything. He knew where they were hiding. He made their hiding place. And you can't hide. It's kind of like the kids, they come here. I shouldn't tell you this, but sometimes we play hide and seek in the church building when nobody's around. And they think they can, find me pretty easily. And I told them, I've designed this building. I know where all the hiding places are. Anyway, they try to hide from me. I shouldn't have told you that. I'd be in trouble, probably. But it's all innocent fun. Trust me. We don't break anything. And I pick up the trash. But I can't help but see that in that light. God is brokenhearted. He's not, you say, we generally think, well, God's just really angry now. Yeah, of course. God is wrathful, and God is sin avenging. But God is described as what? Love. That's how John describes it. And here is the object of his love, the apple of his eye, and he realizes now you're hiding for a reason. Where are you? What have you done? We could look at it in light of the way those old preachers used to look at it, and I don't think they're wrong about that either. Probably more right than me. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out here for your thoughts and consideration. But when you look at it the way they would say it, they're wanting Adam to confront himself. Where are you, Adam? Where are you in relationship to me? Why are you hiding from me? Why are you ashamed? What is it you've done that would cause you to go hide like this? Where are you at? Where are you spiritually? Where are you emotionally? And no doubt we do need to examine ourselves routinely, daily, and ask, where am I? Where do I stand with God? And perhaps that's all he means as well, but I think this is a very heartbreaking question. Where are you? I mean, he's coming to walk with them, and they're hiding from him. I don't know about you, but if I come to see you and you know that it's me and you run and hide from me, that would hurt my feelings. I know some of you have done that before. I'm just telling you. It hurts I got feelings too, you know. I see the curtains moving. I mean, I know you're in there. I know you're in there. I hear you shushing the dog, but I mean, you don't even come to the door. But imagine how God would feel when he knows the people that he loves, that he just made in his own image, are hiding from him. Yes?
I was a bill collector years ago. A little girl came to the door and said, "My mama said tell you she's not here." Mommy said you are.
I love children. So, God judged them. You know, he began in his judgment. Well, first he talks to them and interviews them, but then he judges them. He judges the serpent. And you remember what he said to the serpent in chapter 3, verse 15. Anybody know that by memory? Genesis 3:15. Anyone quote it? Yeah. And I will put between. Okay. So this is, we sometimes say this is a declaration of war, and it is. There'll be conflict between the seed of woman and the seed of this serpent. But it's more than that. It's also an announcement. It's a powerful announcement. We sometimes say this is the starlight age. We come to the Mosaic period, it's the moonlight age. We come to the Christian age, it's the sunlight age. So here we are in the starlight age, the very dawn of human history, and God's stating something that's profound. Of the seed of woman, something wonderful is going to happen. Of the seed of woman, all this work, this evil one is doing to undermine my relationship with you is going to be undone. It's going to be defeated by the seed of this woman. That's what he's saying. You remember in Matthew 1, I think it was verse 18, they shall call his name Emmanuel. Well, which means what? Wow. So we have here an announcement about the incarnation. In Galatians 4, verse 4, Paul said, in the fullness of time, God sent forth the Son, born of a woman, born under the law. Born of a woman, that's right. Well, what did Joseph had nothing. Joseph had nothing to do with it. So it was the seed of woman and God who caused her to be pregnant. It had nothing to do with any relation with a man. Although Joseph was considered to be the father of Jesus, as he was being raised there, that's how he would describe the son of Joseph. But he wasn't his father. And so here God is telling humanity, telling Adam and all of us, that I've got a plan. And this plan involves much more than just that Jesus is going to come through the seed of woman. In 1 Peter 1 and verse 18, knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things like silver and gold from your aimless conduct received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ as of a lamb without blemish and without spot, he indeed was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you. Now, this is powerful because what Peter is telling us is that God has always had a plan. He's always had a plan. I remember asking Rex Turner about that in class. I said, so when God made man, he knew that he was going to sin, right? So why did he make him if he knew he was going to sin? Why did he do that? You know, every time you asked the man from Montgomery a question like that and he didn't want to answer it, he just didn't answer. He just looked at me. And I said, well, I just wondered why God, if he knew all this before it happened, why did he do it anyway? Why did he even start? Why not go some other direction? Why make us? He just looked at me. And I asked this question. I said, is it possible that God had a plan A and a plan B? And he said, no, I don't think so. I said, well, now you have an answer, but he didn't know why he didn't think so. He just didn't think so. But I don't think so either at this point. But I'm saying it is an interesting question. If God had a plan A, which would be what? Adam and Eve doing what? The right thing. And plan B is if they don't do the right thing, this is what I'm going to do to fix it. That's how I understand it. But I'm not sure that I'm right about that. I mean, maybe God knew from the very beginning that this is what's going to happen and this is going to be the remedy. I don't know. All I do know for certain is that at this moment in time, God is telling humanity, I've got a plan. He didn't come up with this plan at the last minute because the Jews rejected their Messiah and caught him off guard. That is the most blasphemous thing I have ever heard in my life. And premillennial preachers are preaching that all the time. Jesus was supposed to set up his kingdom, but, the Jews weren't ready. So God's going to wait till the Jewish people are ready. I mean, there's so much wrong with that concept. So I don't even know where to begin. Well, this is one place to begin, 1 Peter 1:20, because what we're learning here is that God's plan wasn't hatched at the last moment when Jesus was here and he realized, they're going to kill him. So I got to come up with some other plan. That's absurd. God knew that would happen. He came into the world for that very purpose, that he might die to redeem us. That's why he came. It's really powerful. Paul developed this in Ephesians 3 regarding the church. Now the manifold wisdom of God might be known by the church. Notice, to the principalities and powers in the heavenly places, according to the eternal purpose which he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. This was an eternal plan. God's been working it out all along. And we see it developing throughout the Old Testament. All those trappings about the law and the worship associated with the priest and the tabernacle and all of those things are pointing to, they're symbols, foreshadowing something that is to come. And so here again, we have a great and powerful passage. Now, when you think about this declaration of war, God said to the serpent, your seed is going to bruise his heel. What does that mean? Stan, what does that mean? For your heel to be bruised, what does that mean? Are you hurt? It hurt, don't it? But you're still here. You're still getting around. Still aggravating everybody. So, nothing's changed. But your heel's bruised, right? He's had surgery on his foot, by the way, in case you didn't know, so we can have a better understanding. But anyway, y'all didn't get that. Some of you got that, didn't you? That just right past you. But anyway. Well, they're working on your soul. Okay, I'm sorry. I got to stop. So, but when you think about this announcement, how did Satan bruise his heel? Can you imagine being beaten as he was beaten? Nailed to a cross? Spit upon? It hurts. It's bad. In the scheme of things, God is saying, you're bruising his heel. You're going to inflict pain on him. It's going to hurt. But then God says something else. And that something else is the seed of woman that we know of now as Jesus of Nazareth. The seed of woman is going to crush the head. How would he do that? Through his death. Isn't that ironic? So the very thing Satan is using to hurt him, God's going to use that, death, burial, and then resurrection to crush the head of... What does that mean? You remember in the book of Hebrews, as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he himself likewise took part of the same. That through death, he might destroy what? He might destroy him who had power over death. You mean Satan has power over death? Why is there death in the world? You remember when Peter in Acts 3 was talking about Jesus and how those people chose Barabbas over Jesus? You know, you chose Barabbas over the Prince of Life. He's the Prince of Life. And Satan is the Prince of Death. I mean, they couldn't be more opposite. And yet, in his work, in this death industry, Jesus came into the world and destroyed that work of Satan. Because by his resurrection, we now know and are assured that even though we will die, we will be resurrected. And so the last enemy that shall be defeated is... And so who's really the victor here? And so who really wins the war here? And so you're going to bruise my heel, but I'm going to, in that bruising, destroy your work. The final, of course, demise of Satan, I believe, is in Revelation 20 and verse 10. The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. So, Jesus said in Matthew 25 that these will go away into everlasting punishment, to a place prepared for who? So he's preparing hell for the devil and his angels. And unfortunately, all of humanity that goes along with his rebellion will wind up in the place God prepared for him. We'll be there where God intended him to be and his angels. But those who do not obey the gospel, do not know God, that's where they're going to be for all eternity with that wicked one. Of course, on the other hand, those who are in Christ, those who have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, they will be with God in paradise forever, because Jesus said, if you believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. And behold, I go and do what? Isn't that a beautiful thought? So he's preparing hell for the devil and his angels. He's preparing heaven for us. That's a beautiful thought. But again, this is a declaration of war, but it's also a statement about what God intends to do. Fine. Yes, ma'am.
Well, in the verse 15 where it says that he'll bruise his head, mine says bruise, not crush. So,
What version are you using?
well, I've got New King James. Robert's got King James, and his says the same thing.
You know, anybody have any Hebrew scholarship in here? Want to help me with that?
Well, I wondered, when it says bruise, is that the same word in both?
My understanding is in the Hebrew it's much stronger than just a knock. I mean, I got grandkids with bruise all over their heads, and they just keep running, doesn't stop them. It's more than a bruise. I mean, this was a death blow. I mean, that's however you understand the translation of that word. It's clearly a death blow because he's not gonna get past it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just wondered if in the Hebrew or whatever, it is the same word, or is it
I think that's a good question. Well, we'll have to look that up. I don't know. Anybody know? Anybody have? Anybody Googling that? Jonathan's half asleep. He's not Googling right now. He got his hands full.
The New American Standard shows it both.
Oh, it is both?
So it's the same root word.
Oh, it is the same word?
Yeah. It's just
Mine says crush, and I've got the NIV.
they chose to, the different translators chose to use a different word, but it's the same root.
Same word for. So you can crush somebody's foot, or you can crush somebody's heel, or crush somebody's head. I think I'd choose the heel over the head, because if you get your head crushed, then again they're using the same word, right? But it's used interchangeably in the American Standard. That's interesting. I don't know. I never thought about that, Donna. Ma'am? Well, it's a good question. We need to look into it.
Yeah, it says in Hebrew language, translated English, the word means crushed. It implies a deep contusion.
A deep contusion or crushed.
Merely breaking the skin externally.
Merely breaking the skin externally? Yeah. Yeah. Well, what was the consequence of eating whatever that fruit was? Well, God's not going to walk with them anymore in the cool of the day. In fact, God's going to drive them from the garden altogether, because they could partake of the tree of life and live forever. That can't be. So God's having to drive them out. Do you think God did this with joy and glee? God happy about this? In fact, I want to submit to you it's exactly the opposite. He's so unhappy about it. He's just announced what he's going to do to fix it. And in his announcement, he knew what it meant. He knew what it would cost him to fix this broken fellowship. And so he places the fiery sword and the cherubim there at the east side of the garden to keep them from re-entering. And so now they are out in the world, and they're no longer just walking with God in the cool of the day. That's tragic. When you think about sin and what it does to us, we never benefit from sinning. We're only hurting ourselves. And the more we do it, the more we hurt ourselves. It really is not very smart at all. Shall we continue in sin? Paul asked the Roman Christian. When you think about that old sermon we used to hear, shall we continue in sin when you know the price paid for her, or when you know, or paid for it, or shall we continue in sin when you know the consequences associated with it? When you think about all the broken homes and broken lives and reputation and heartache and misery and death and suffering, I mean, it's all tied to sin. Why would we continue to do it? We're stupid. It's like Isaiah said in Isaiah 53, I'm using the English Standard Version when I say stupid, but when you go to Isaiah 53, all we like, they're not real bright. But that's what God says of us. We're like sheep just wandering around. And we get lost easily. And that's because we're not thinking. We're not bright. And that's why we need to constantly listen to the voice of God. Follow the shepherd's voice. And you won't get lost. If you listen to the voice, you won't get lost. When you start listening to everything else in the world, it's noisy out there. You can't hear the voice of the shepherd anymore, and you're lost. And it's not going to help you. Any questions or comments about that? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When God told Satan that he would be condemned to hell, like those he was carrying with him or had sent on ahead, did that mean that he was at that time and still is not in hell?
Why are you asking questions like that? You just want to disrupt my class.
Why did you ask Brother Turner the question?
Well, I asked Brother Turner a lot of questions. That's what I'm going to do. Well, how about this? In Jude and 2 Peter, the angels that sinned, it's always in the past tense, but the angels that sinned have been reserved into everlasting chains of gloominess or darkness. That's where they are. Or, what does that mean? Chained in gloomy places. But I thought he was roaming about, Peter said. So why are you asking me that when Peter's already answered you? What? Apparently being chained to gloomy places doesn't mean you're completely confined, because he's still moving around.
But nobody else is.
Nobody? How do you know? There's principalities and powers all over the place. Ma'am?
Nobody that's in torment now? Or are there people in torment now?
I think I'm just going to look at her. Why are you trying to distract me? You don't want me to reach chapter 4, do you?
No, but I have another question too.
Okay.
Where's the Garden of Eden now?
Somewhere in Iran or Iraq, I guess. I don't know why. It was in the world that then was. Next question. Ma'am? In my backyard? I mean, why would you ask such a question? I don't know. That was chapter 2. You're going back in time.
I know, but I didn't ask it then.
Oh, okay, you got the floor, so you're going to filibuster. Okay, I got you.
No, I was waiting to see if you were going to touch on it.
Actually, it is an interesting question about Satan and the angels that are cast out with him and them being chained in gloominess? That is an interesting question. And I don't know that I have a good answer for you other than he's still roaming about. So you're saying he's in torment. Is he? I don't know. Maybe he hasn't gone there yet. He wasn't there when he came to appear with the other sons of God in the book of Job, chapter 1. He was there at that worship service, and he was talking directly to God. That's not torment. So I don't know where Satan is now, but I do know he roams about like a roaring lion. And so why would God allow him and not any of his minions? I mean, there are demons that work on his behalf. So there's so much we don't know and don't understand, and we can't possibly know it and understand it. So let's just stick with what we can. How about that? Is that a good answer?
Pretty good.
You tried to get me off track, didn't you?
Still hadn't answered the one about the garden.
I'm not. I told you my backyard. All right, chapter 4. We've got 5 minutes to read chapter 4. Are we going to read chapter 4 or not? Do you want to read chapter? Let's read chapter 4. All right. I got 5 minutes. Why are you opening the door? Oh, a lot of hot air. Okay. Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat, and the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. The Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened his mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. And the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. I don't know where that is, friend. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mahujael, and Mahujael begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. Then Lamech took for himself 2 wives. The name of one was Adah, and the name of the second was Zillah. And Adah bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the harp and flute. And as for Zillah, she also bore Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Then Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 70 sevenfold. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son, and named him Seth. For God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. And as for Seth, to him also a son was born. He named him Enos. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. So we'll just have to leave it here with this thought. Obviously, there are 2 kinds of people. We talked about that in December when we were looking at the conflict in worldviews. I think we were illustrating that point. there are two kinds of people. People that tend toward godliness and those who tend toward worldliness. And so we're going to see a phrase that's going to come up in chapter 6, the sons of God as opposed to the daughters of men. And I know a lot of weird, silly theories come from that. There's nothing more or less than there are good people and bad people. There are those who want to do the right thing and those who don't really care and want to do their own thing. And so that's where the conflict arises, and we see in Genesis 4. So we'll say, hopefully, a little more about that next week. I mean, that's like exactly as the clock is striking 7:50. Y'all can talk if you want to. Nobody in here yet. $493 in your psalm books, please. We got some good-looking children here, you know it? We do. They are. We got a bunch of them, too. They just keep coming. Wow. I think Sonia brought a bus tonight. I'm glad to see it. That's good. $840, right?
493.
Where'd I come up with 840?
I have no idea.
I made it up. 493 in your psalm book, please. Bremen's hosting this Friday, the 27th, starting at 7 p.m. the singing, area-wide singing. Refreshments will be served following that singing. Momentum Youth Conference at Carrollton is hosted on the 28th. That's this Saturday, starting at 9. Ralph Gilmore speaking, and the schedule for the day will conclude at 3 p.m. Hopefully they'll be able to muzzle him. He talks a lot and says a lot of things, so I know they're going to be in for a treat. So if you get a chance, go hear Brother Gilmore. My mother had a successful procedure yesterday. My father found out today he does not have to have surgery on his eyes, but they hope they can treat his condition with some eye drop. We're very thankful to report that. Sister Early has gone home, but continues to be in need of our prayers. So please remember those who are suffering. Anyone else we need to mention on our prayer list? Don't forget, we have lists on the table in the back. So please, before you leave tonight, pick up a list. And yes, ma'am? What about it? I already read it. It's okay. I don't feel so bad now. It's not just me. It's Wednesday night, right? The thing we now, okay, Jenny's fault. Okay, blame her. All right. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to hear that. Ernest Wheeler's a good man, and we're sorry that he's suffering. And so thank you for reminding us about that and bringing that to our attention. When we're singing the song of invitation that's been announced, we do this every Wednesday. It's a matter of convenience. It's just a tradition. It's not something that's required in Scripture, but it's certainly something I believe that in generic commands would allow us this opportunity while we are assembled. If someone has needs, that they can express those needs. I think it's a good tradition, and we want to continue to remember that's exactly what it is. But we will sing a song. We call it a song of invitation. And in this singing of this song, we're offering the opportunity to come forward. And if you need to obey the gospel, this would be a grand time to do that. Be the best time to do that, in fact. If you need to be restored as an erring child of God and need the prayers of the church, this would be a grand time, the best time, the only time you know you're promised to do that. Or if we can help you in some other way, please make that need known while together we stand and as we sing. Oh.